All right, welcome back to another episode of the Man in Progress podcast. I'm incredibly excited to introduce you guys to Crystal Irom. She is an expert dating coach. She's been helping people all over the world, especially women, better understand relationships, navigate dating. Crystal, I could not be more excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
I'm pumped. I found your content on Instagram, truthfully, probably a few months ago, and I was just lurking. I didn't even follow yet. I would just creep because I didn't want to be the guy who was like, "Oh, there's a guy following this woman who talks about women, dating, and relationships." But I finally hit the follow button not too long ago and was like, you know what? If I'm starting this journey, talking about the things that we're going through as men, and many of the men listening to this are interested in women, how can we not have a woman's perspective on all this stuff? So I'm super grateful to have you. Just for anyone who's listening, hopefully they listened to the bio and got a lot of your background. But do you mind just giving us a little bit of a backstory of kind of what led you into teaching other women about dating and relationships?
Sure. So, my background in education is actually in law. I'm a lawyer. I went through what a lot of people I think go through in their careers, which is like, I wanted to do something else. And I was scared. I had the golden handcuffs. I was just like, how am I supposed to leave this? Like, first of all, 3 years of education, studying for the California bar, passing the bar and practicing law to now go like do something else. And I was working at a law firm, and I won't go into the whole story because it is a whole story. But eventually I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to sort of go for it. I'm not going to take a huge leap. I'm not going to leave my job, but like maybe I'll just learn a little bit about this whole coaching thing. I had heard of coaches, and it honestly just sounded too good to be true. I was just like, if there was ever a job that was made exactly for me, it would be coaching people. And I was just like, there's no way I can make money at that, but maybe I'll just enjoy it. It'll be something I can do on the side. So I went through training and I started coaching people. And, I did what a lot of people do in their careers, which is, I took this step towards what I ultimately wanted, but I went into what I call like a shadow career. Like it was much closer to what I wanted, but it wasn't quite it because I started working as a career coach. I had gotten very good at the interview process, at updating resumes, and I'd helped a bunch of friends, and it just felt really natural. And so I was like, you know what? A lot of, millennials are, struggling with the job hunt and things like that. When I graduated from college, it was right around that recession.
Yeah.
And so people were just sort of, it felt like they'd taken whatever job they could get. And it's like a few years down the line, you're like, okay, I'm ready to do something that I actually like. So I was working as a career coach, but my passion has always been love and dating, like understanding the dynamics between people and all of that stuff has always just been like my heart. And I didn't have the relationship I wanted. And so I was just like, how am I going to be a dating coach if I haven't found love? So I discouraged myself. I basically told myself I couldn't do it. And so I was doing the career coaching. And then I really intentionally, a few years back, decided I was ready for my husband. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to figure out all of this stuff that I have been doing wrong. Like, I'm going to figure out all of my mistakes, why I've been making them, get clear on all of my patterns, and I am going to turn them around, and I am going to call in my husband. So I had been through so many heartbreaks. Like I can't even tell you. I went through so many heartbreaks, and I was just like, enough is enough. You're the common denominator in this. You're going to figure this out, and you're going to meet a good man. So I did what I call like a dating detox. And so for 6 months, I was like, I'm not going on any dates. And of course, then it was like, there was guys everywhere being like, oh, I want to go out with you. I was just like, no, I'm detoxing. I'm figuring my stuff out so I don't keep repeating my patterns. So I did the dating detox, and then New Year's going into 2016. So like December 2015, I was just like, 2016 is the year of the man. I am going to meet my person. And I really intentionally went about what I call manifesting. I manifested my husband. So I met my husband, who you briefly met. He's also my tech support.
Yeah. Shout out
And
to Kobe for setting all the tech up.
yeah. And so I went from single to married in 10 months. You know, I created this relationship really intentionally, and it was just easy. It was so easy. And it was just like the natural progression of the relationship was smoother and easier than I'd ever thought possible. So now I'm in this amazing relationship and I'm happily married, and I'm still working as a career coach, right? And then I went to a retreat. It was just for women. It was a really small group. I think there was 9 of us in Bali.
Wow.
And I'm on this retreat, and the women there were just like, why are you a career coach? I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, what else would I be doing? And they're like, you make dating and love sound so fun and easy. Why aren't you talking to people about that? And I was just like, no, I can't just do what I really want. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I gotta just yearn for it forever. And, you know, the woman leading the retreat was just like, well, why didn't you become a dating coach? Like, you're obviously very passionate about it. You really talked about it in a unique way. And I was just like, well, I didn't have the relationship I wanted. She was like, but you're married. Like, you've been married for a while now. And I was like, okay, fine. So I told Kobe about it. And I was just like, listen, I have a crazy idea. Please don't be mad at me. What do you think? And he was like, 100% go for it, babe. That's obviously what you should be doing. And the rest is history. I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, it took me some time and there were some sort of bobs and weaves in my path. But once I started, it was just like, obviously, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It was just, it felt really so much more natural.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of my story. But I gotta tell you, this is like the most interesting thing. I was actually interviewed on someone else's podcast a couple of months ago, and the woman who was interviewing me was an astrologer. And so before the call, she had looked at my chart, my
Astrological
astrological
chart.
chart.
Yeah.
And she was like, you know, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, kind of, but tell me more. I'm really interested to hear this. And basically, there are things in my chart, which is just like, love is going to be something that you struggle with, heal from, and then teach people on. Like, it is literally in my astrological chart. And I was just like, that's incredible. She said, not everyone uses it. Like, it's like a teacher and a healer. And not everyone uses it if they have the placement. But she was like, you're literally built for this. So that was a long response to your simple question, but here we are.
No, that's so cool. And I think honestly, there's so much to unpack there. I think the first thing I resonate with is I went to 3 years of school to get doctorate degree in physical therapy, and now I coach people doing online businesses. And there's a piece of you that has to be willing to take a chance and move away from that status, the allure of the safety. And you talked about the golden handcuffs. That was one of the first things that jumped out to me. Of just kudos to you for taking that leap and taking a chance on your heart of what you feel. I feel like there's a lot of men right now, in particular, men and women, but men in particular right now, who are afraid to leave the golden handcuffs because that's where there's a sense of identity and all that stuff. And then 2, manifestation. What an amazing play on words. What a perfect thing that you put it out there. And I want to ask, it's going to lead into the next question I have. And then just lastly, like, the last thing is, she tells you the astrology lady tells you, this is what you're meant to be doing. And I think the biggest thing I caught from that was you saying that she told you that not everyone uses it. And how many of us have this impulse or this gift that we aren't giving to people, like we're not allowing ourselves to go through and to see someone who it does align with, whether you believe in astrology and that or not, is that just the lesson there is, if you do have that in you and maybe it is your gift and you're hiding it, what you're holding back for other people, because you've now gone on to help so many other people impact their lives and have better lives. And I wanted to lead with a follow-up question to what you said. Was I'm going to manifest my man. I'm going to manifest the guy that I want. And I guess I'd love to know this is probably a totally opinionated response for you.
Well, actually, wait, can I interrupt you for a second?
Oh yeah.
Because what you said about, probably having some of your listeners that maybe are knowing that they're pulled towards something else and feeling that fear about moving forward. And I just wanted to add on something to that
Yeah.
because, I think that we all get clues, right? And it's just like, what is it going to take for you to actually listen? Because
Yeah.
it's like, I was so meant to be a love coach. Like it also makes sense that I'm a lawyer. But I had a consult one time with, a client came in when I was practicing law. And it just was like smacking me in the face, and I still wouldn't make the move. But this guy comes in and he says, I'm interested in getting divorced, and so I just want to find out about the steps that I would need to take. And so it's like we're having this consult, and I'm sort of telling him, what's involved, and then he tells me a little bit about his situation. And I must have given him a look or something, being like, what are you doing here? And he was just like, what? Do you think I shouldn't be getting divorced? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know you. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. And then he says that. And I mean, that's what I was thinking. I'm sure I gave him a very professional response. But then it's like we continue with our meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, it's like it still was so unclear to me why this man was, going to get a divorce. He just had a very cavalier attitude. And, I've seen that people don't take divorce lightly, whatever their religion or culture or beliefs, it's like people don't take that lightly. And I thought it was really bizarre. And so it's like we finish our whole meeting and he says to me again, do you think that I shouldn't be getting a divorce? And, for some reason, in that moment, instead of just shrugging him off and giving him, some lawyerly response, I was just like, do you think you should be getting a divorce?
Mm.
And he was just like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know. And we had this whole conversation about like, what is love and what does commitment mean to you? And what does it mean to be in a marriage? And it was so interesting. And one of the things that he said was that, to me, divorce is not something that you take lightly. Like, you get a divorce when you've done everything you can and you cannot make it work. Where it's like, I put in my best and it wasn't enough for this relationship to survive. And I was just like, that makes perfect sense. Like, that's really very, like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, have you done that? Like, have you given your all? Have you done everything you can? And he was like, no. I could think of things that I could do today that would turn things around.
Mm.
And he was like, thank you so much for your time. I don't need to take a card. Like, we're going to work this out. And that was it. And then it's like, I come out of the meeting and I'm talking to one of the partners and they're like, oh, is this going to be a client? I was just like, no. And I like told the whole story. And this partner was just like laughing at me. He was like, maybe you should be a marriage counselor. And I was like, yeah, maybe. It was so funny, but it was like, I got that little like hint that like that, because I left that meeting and I just felt so happy. I was so relieved that I didn't get this client, that this man had seen things in this other way and was so enthusiastic and excited to approach things differently.
Mm.
So it's like sometimes we get these really blatant things in our face and you're still not ready. Like, it was I think it was more than a year. I mean, it was definitely more than a year before I became a love coach. I think it may have been even more than a year until I, started coaching. But it's just like, I feel like we get clues. And when you will listen to the clues that come up, like when you get these hints, this is when people make really easy transitions. When you hear about someone and they're just like, oh, I decided to do this. And then my intuition told me to do this. And it's like, everything goes really easily. And you're just like, wow, that's amazing. You've changed your life and everything went really smooth. But like what we hear about so much more is someone who's like, I hit rock bottom. Like, this is the worst thing that ever happened. And then the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's like, those are people who won't listen to the clues. It's like their intuition is telling them, they're being led somehow. And it's not until like the universe really kicks them in the ass and they're like, oh, okay, I hear you. Like, time to do something drastically different.
Yeah. Which, thank you for adding that on. I think that's such a powerful lesson right now too. As we're recording this, it is during mid coronavirus, and people have maybe more time to think about the things that they've been doing, and maybe have time to look into things that they could do differently if they've been in a place of whether it's complacency or stagnancy, that they can look into different things. So I think it's great that you brought that up, and being in tune, actually reflecting back on some of these things that have happened. So just thank you for sharing that, Crystal. I really appreciate it. I want to dive in with you, because this is, we've got the show, we've got these guys out there that are listening, that are dealing with the whole gambit of emotions, most of which we hide and don't talk about, because that's just our nature. I really want to start with you, because you said something like, I want to find a good man. And this is a really broad question, so I guess I would love for you to interpret it however you want. What have you found makes a good man?
Great question. So, I have to add a caveat to this, because I said good man, and what I really meant was like a good man for me.
Yeah.
Because I had met some really good men, but they didn't want what I wanted, or they didn't want me. And so for me, that could be a good man, but he's not a good man for me. Like, you could be a wonderful, wonderful person, but if you don't want to be in a relationship with me and I'm pining over you, like, it's not good for me.
Yeah.
So to me, a good man, it's always going to start with like, what is his character? So we're talking about someone kind, someone loyal, someone trustworthy. Those would be like the ones that I would say most women would include. And then it's like, there's always preferences. So for me, it's like, I wanted someone who I felt like we were aligned. We were aligned in terms of the things that we value and the way that we wanted to live our lives and the goals and what we're hoping to create.
Yeah.
It's like the simplest thing, because I feel like everyone's definition would be a little bit different, but I think that honesty and that trustworthiness and that alignment is really the key.
Okay. I think that you make a great point, which is, and this applies to men as well, which is who is good for you? Who's a good man, woman for you? And that takes a lot of reflecting. I'm really fascinated by this, and I don't know if you have, just for context, guys, we didn't do any prep for this, so this could go any direction. I'm just thinking back in my own life where, recently in the last, 5 or 6 years, gone on, God knows, hundreds of dates, dated people, been in serious relationships, and I'm just looking back, and where I really struggle right now, and I think a lot of men are struggling, is how do I balance between the old school masculine perception of the male, stereotype, dominant, quiet, strong, don't share emotion, be provider, with modern day, like, hey, you could equally be a stay-at-home dad, you could do these things. And I found at times in dating that I really struggle to know how to balance it. Like, I want to be kind and I want to be nice, but I also have been guilty or been subtly, I don't know what the word is, accused isn't right, subtly mentioned, like, yeah, you're just so nice, but it's almost in a negative way, where it's like, you're lacking that masculine. I guess from a woman's perspective, what do you feel like, how do men balance this in today's world? I feel like it's this thing that we really wrestle with and we don't know how to deal with. And I know it depends on the woman as well. I guess in your opinion, if you're working through this, and let's say you've had clients who are like, he's too nice, he's not dominant enough or masculine enough, or vice versa, he's just always dominant, he's always masculine, never softens up. How do you think men can handle balancing this in today's world?
Okay, great question. I love this. So there's like several things that I'm seeing here.
Don't you love when I ask like 9 questions at once for you, and you're
love
like,
it. So first of all, I'm not going to say every. When I say every, I don't mean every single one, but generally speaking, we're going to speak in generalizations, right? Because most women want a good guy with a little bit of edge. So yes, we want someone who is ultimately kind, who at his core is kind, who is going to treat us well, who is going to show up, who's going to be loving. But women want a man with a little bit of edge. It's the same way that men want women that are sweet and feminine and that that have that softness. It's not that you have to be macho. It's that women have a hard time respecting a man if they feel like, I can walk all over him. So sometimes guys will take it too far and they want to be so sweet and kind and nice that they put up with really bad behavior from women, and then the woman doesn't respect them
Mm.
because she's like, I know that this guy's obsessed with me, I can do whatever I want. And it's not a conscious thing. This is subconscious, just the way that most of the way that we're interacting with each other is subconscious, right? Like it's
Yeah.
patterns, it's conditioning. So the way that I think that a lot of men are going to tap into this is by getting clear on who they really are.
Mm.
When you are putting up an act, when you're trying to be nicer than you are, or sweeter than you are, or tougher than you are, any of those things, it's going to come across. There is nothing sexier than someone who is confident and authentic. So it's like, you don't have to try to be over the top nice. If you're a kind person and you can feel good about who you are and the way that you show up in the world, it's like, that's enough. And if a woman wants someone who's super, super sweet, then maybe that's just not your person. Or if you are a kind person and you're really jovial and a woman wants someone who's really, really tough, again, that's just not your person. My husband is very friendly. He's very friendly, very jovial. Like people describe him as like a teddy bear. And there is a time in my life where I would not have been into him. I would have been like, he's too nice.
Mm.
As I focused more and got really clear on what I truly desired, I was just like, no, I do need that because I can lean into being really serious and really complex, and I can deal with anxiety and all of those things. And so it's like, for me to have someone whose emotional life is more simple and less complex was actually ultimately better for me,
Mm.
you know? And so I think sometimes we're trying to find someone who's exactly like us, and we're saying, well, I'm deep and emotional, so I need a man who's deep and brooding, and you know, all of those things. And I think guys can do the same thing, where they're like, I need a woman who's really intellectual. And it's like, maybe that's exactly what you need, but maybe you need someone who can allow you to bring up the playful side, or you know, the silly side, or the fun, you know, someone who can bring some levity into your life. So things aren't always so intense. Like I think about if I were with a man who was just like me, like we would just be very serious, like very intellectually stimulating and deep, but there would be some fun missing. There would be some lightness missing.
Mm.
You know, so I think the more comfortable you can be in who you are, the less you're going to come up against these issues. I think that like a lot of it arises because you're trying to be a little bit different than what you are. Now, the word that you used was sort of like nice. I like to make a distinction. I refer to like a good guy. Like I'm like, you want a good man, you want a good guy, because what I've seen is that some men use this niceness as a facade, and they're not nice at
Mm.
all. They're total jerks, and they've got this seething resentment towards women, and they're like, I'm such a nice guy, and nice guys always lose. Like they're always going for jerks, and they hate women. They hate women, and they're telling themselves and everyone else that'll listen that they're such nice guys. And it's like, no, no, no. You are not a nice guy. You're polite enough that people aren't like realizing that you are not such a nice person. So that's something that I see. And I you know, I tell my students and clients, like, you don't have to be with someone just because he's nice. And if someone is really nice and he keeps telling you how nice he is, and, you know, he's frustrated that he's such a nice guy and women keep passing him up, I'm like, that's a red flag.
Mm.
You know, men who are really sure of themselves, who are secure, they're not going around telling everyone how nice they are. My husband is like the sweetest person ever, but like he never is telling people that he's a nice guy. Like people see that he's really kind and generous and giving, and they're just like, oh wow, Kobe's like such a love bug. Like he's so loving. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Um, it's so it's that's the bottom line. It's like the more confident and secure you can feel in yourself, the less of an issue it's going to be. Because yeah, women want a good guy with a little bit of an edge, someone that they know isn't going to allow them to, like, women don't want someone who they can walk over. They want someone who's going to call them out if they're being really, if they're acting crazy, you know, if they're being crazy. They know, like most women want a guy who's going to be like, I love you, but you need to put a stop to this. You're doing too much right now. Women want to be with someone, you know, and I think that sometimes the reason that it might seem to men that women will go for jerks rather than like a nice guy is because it's not because they're looking for jerks. It's because women are looking for strength. they're looking for strength. The women, especially women who are very much in their feminine, who are very in touch with their feelings, it's very chaotic, right? Like a woman's energy, the feminine, really, the feminine energy can be very chaotic. And so they're seeking the masculine, they're seeking someone strong because it feels like my emotions could just run away with me. Like, I don't know how deep this could go. I could cry for the rest of my life, it seems. And I want someone who's going to be able to hold energetically, like a container, who can hold me when it feels like I might fall apart. Who's like, I got you, babe. Cry your heart out. I'm not scared of these emotions. And so it's like, that's really where it comes up. It's not that a man has to be like weeping all over himself. It's that some men are afraid of emotions. They're like terrified of emotions. And that makes it harder for a woman to feel safe. She doesn't want to let go if he's going to be like, oh, you're crying? I can't deal with this. She wants someone who can just hold the space for her to completely let go at times. Now, if she's losing her mind every day, then that's a different issue. Like, that's probably maybe, a level of growth for her. Like, that's going to be a hard relationship to sustain. But it's like, you want to be strong enough that you're not terrified of emotions, that you can hold that space, that you're not going to allow a woman to walk all over you, but that you can be loving and caring and like do things to make her feel special and cared for.
Yeah.
So that was a complicated answer, but it was kind of a complicated question. There's no straightforward answer.
Yeah, and anytime we're dealing with humans, I've yet to come across anything that's just simple. It's complex, and I'm glad you brought that up because I really want to dive into strength and what strength is, because I think the way that you described it is maybe new or different for a lot of men who think strength is a physical, stoic kind of feeling or way to be, rather than strength is just being present and able to hold space for someone, which is different. And I really want to, my biggest question is, I think this is where we feel a pull as men, is I want to be able to play that role. But if I play that role, I am so scared to then open up and be vulnerable, because am I then breaking the container? And what will she think of me if I ever break open that container to reveal my own weaknesses, my own vulnerabilities? Someone like me, I know a lot of guys listening dealing with anxiety, depression, things that like I have those same crazy emotions, that if I'm meant to be the one of strength all the time, does that mean I should never be able to show it? And that's where I think we struggle a lot, is where's the boundary then as a man to be able to express these emotions, where I think historically it's just been shove it down, go achieve something else, put your energy into focusing, leave the situation, don't address it. How do you feel like men can handle that with women, where they can still be the strength and container for their partner, but also be able to go outside of their own container and feel safe to do that?
Yeah. So I think that the most powerful thing that men and women can do, all people, is to learn how to take care of yourself. So it's like, even though I'm talking about a woman wanting a strong man, like, you want to be with someone and you want to be someone who on a basic level is okay to take care of themselves. It's very tiring and exhausting and ultimately not healthy to be with someone where like they are not okay without you.
Yeah.
So I think the way that you want to think about it is like, we have conditioning, right? We have different kind of conditioning. So women are conditioned not to show emotions like anger. Whereas for men are conditioned that that's like one of the only emotions that they're allowed to show. Like, men, you can show anger, you can punch a wall, you can fight a guy, but like, don't let anyone see that you're anxious or sad or fearful, right? So men express anger, but like they often will sort of put all of their other emotions express as anger also. And it's like women do the same thing with sadness. So it's like a woman who's really angry, and I'm sure some of your listeners have experienced this, where they're fighting with their girlfriend and she starts crying and you're like, why are you crying? And she's like, I'm not sad, I'm so mad. Like, we get so angry that all we can do is cry, because it's like we don't have another way of expressing our thing. But it's like, ultimately, all of our emotions need to be felt. And that, it's like at the simplest level, it's like they need to be felt. And we put up so much resistance to them because there's this idea, we get this idea in our mind that if I start feeling my emotion, maybe it won't ever stop. Like if I allow myself to feel the sadness, it might not ever go away. And it doesn't feel good. But what I've noticed is that men have so much resistance to their feelings that they don't even know where they're feeling them. But the truth of the matter is it's a sensation in your body. It's an uncomfortable sensation. So the simplest thing that I think any human can do is start learning and becoming aware of where they're feeling things. So for me, for example, I feel everything in my chest. If I feel anxious, and like even if I think about anxiety, I can feel the sensation of anxiety. I can feel anxiety. And anxiety to me, it often feels like a tightness in my chest. Sometimes it feels heavy, sometimes it feels fuzzy. I feel my positive emotions in my chest as well. Like it'll feel like when I'm just happy, it just feels like expansive and warm and sort of soft. You know, a lot of people will feel their emotions in their stomach. A lot of people feel them in their shoulders. When people talk about like, oh, it feels like I've got the weight of the world, they'll feel like a heaviness in their shoulders. So it's like, that's a really powerful place to start. And you can do this partnered or not. Starting to just become aware of where your feelings are. When you can do this, it gives you space to actually just allow them. So what I mean is this. If you're feeling really anxious about something, what we usually do is we try not to think about it, right? Like we're like, I want to just get rid of it. We try to suppress it. And often that makes it bigger, right?
Yeah.
If you would just feel whatever you're feeling, even to just say, you know what, I'm setting 5-minute timer. Put a 5-minute timer on your phone and just allow yourself to feel it and just breathe. You know, it's like you want to sort of ask yourself, can I just allow this feeling to be here? Can I just allow this? Can I tolerate this? And it's amazing because we can. Like we think we can't. That's why we spend so long resisting it. You know, even if you set a timer for a little bit longer, and it's like you'll notice that as you allow it, it starts to dissipate. Because it's just a feeling that wants to be felt. So that is sort of it's like an abbreviated version of something called the Sedona method. The Sedona method is a book. It's by, I'm not going to say the author because I'm not 100% sure I'm going to say it right, but the book is called the Sedona method. And it's just like such a simple way of releasing emotions. And, you know, when I worked as a career coach, I worked with men and women. And so it's like, I noticed that a lot of men, it really took them some time to figure out, they're like, I didn't even know what I feel in my body. Like, I don't even know. They didn't know. So that's a really, really powerful thing to do. So all that's to say is that start by taking care of yourself first. And can you open up in your relationship? Like, of course. It is hard for a man. Like, I'm not going to lie. This would be one of those areas where it's like, I do think that is a little bit of a challenge, because if you are feeling fear or anxiety about the same thing that the woman in your life is fearing at the same time, then when she's freaking out is not the time to reveal that like you're also freaking out. Like if she's crying, you can't be like, I'm scared too. We're in this together. We're both going to die. It's horrible. Like that's not going to be helpful. But I think in many situations to say like, I actually understand what you're feeling. I'm feeling a similar sort of thing. I know that we can get through it together. It's powerful and beautiful, and like that's an amazing way to be able to grow with your person. What I think happens is that sometimes men wait until there's like a whole blow up. They wait until there's like a big thing going on, and it's sort of like he has no choice because she's like, tell me what's happening with you, like you're not letting me in, you're not sharing, like I have no idea. Or she's just having a meltdown and then he shares. Don't do it then. Like if there's something that you've been struggling with, stretch yourself where it's like, even if instinctually you want to just be in your man cave and sort it all out on your own, stretch yourself. And I would say that a way of doing that, and I think that this is powerful for men and women, is like when you're having a conversation with your person, you can tell them like, I want to talk to you about something, and it would be most helpful for me if this was your response, like if this was your reaction, you know? So sometimes when I'm talking to my husband, if I'm upset about something, I'll say to him, I want to talk to you about something. I think I already know what I'm going to do, but I'm just really upset. Can you just listen? Or like if I cry, can you just like let me cry? Because men want to go into solution mode right away. And so I have to be like, please don't help me with solutions. Like I already know what I want to do. I'm just really upset and I want to talk to you. And I'm sure it's not his favorite thing because he's a man. He wants to have solutions and he doesn't like seeing me upset. And he's like, how can I fix this immediately? I'm like, by doing exactly what I ask. But men can do the same thing where you're like, I already have a solution. I'm just telling you, or, I don't have a solution. I'm going to talk it out with you. You can say like, this is what would be helpful for me. Like, or I'm just telling you so you understand what's happening in my head, but like, please don't ask questions. Or, I'm just going to give you the basic information and we'll follow up on it in a week. Like, if you can express what you think is going to be the best thing. And if this is new for you, then you may be wrong. You may say, I want this particular thing. And then, you start getting feedback and you're like, nope, that's not what I wanted at all. This is not helping. Trial and error. Like that's what life is, right? Like you get to figure out, okay, actually, I think I would prefer this instead. But your person isn't a mind reader, just like you're not a mind reader. And so when you do your best to sort of communicate what's happening, and the other thing that's important about this and that I think is really valuable for men to understand is that people are self-centered, not just women. Everyone is self-centered. So if you're in a relationship and you're struggling with something, let's say you're struggling with something with work, and you just sort of go quiet, not because you're trying to shut the woman that you love out, but just because you're like, I need to work through this. That's a very natural response for men to sort of just want to go on their own. And so you don't have to get rid of that entirely where you're calling a whole meeting and explaining things. But you have to understand that she's going to, because we're all self-centered beings, she's immediately going to think that she's done something, that you're upset with her.
Yeah.
And that's where, she might start having more of a meltdown. She may have been a little bit anxious about something and then you get all quiet and she's like, oh my God, he's mad at me. What did I do? What did I do? And then she's like, can you tell me what I did wrong? I'm so upset. I don't understand. And you're just like, literally nothing except for what you're doing right now. But it's like, if even to just say like, I'm struggling with something at work. I love you. I'm not upset with you at all, but like, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit while I sort this out. Like, you don't understand how freeing that would be for so many women, where she can be like, okay, I can take care of myself for 5 hours while you are like in your room, like getting your mind straight or working on your, whatever it is that you're trying to sort out mentally. But it's like when we're left to our own devices, we go to dark places and we're assuming the worst. And it's like all of a sudden you're in a big fight and you're like, none of this had anything to do with you. Why are you freaking out at me? She's like, I know you're about to dump me. And you're like, that is the last thing on my mind.
Oh, I thank you so much for that. I think that's a great answer. And I love the idea of pre-framing, sort of like in a pre-framing, like this is, how I feel like I might want a response from this. Like, what a concept to go into of like, look, I know I'm feeling this way. And cause that to me, that's one of the worst is the conflict, right? Of I lay this out there and I'm hoping for a certain response, but I never made that clear. And when the response isn't what I was hoping for, let down, disappointment because expectations weren't met because I didn't set the expectations, which you just, I think that's an absolute brilliant point that you made.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, expectations are something that come up at literally every phase of dating and relationships. And, sometimes people, I don't know, people have all sorts of impressions of me, but I think sometimes it sounds unromantic because I talk about like the importance of like communicating what you desire. Like you can't hold, I mean, you can, people do all the time, but it doesn't serve them well. It does not serve you well to hold expectations of another person that are completely unexpressed because there is no manual. Like we have not all received the same book that says this is how you're supposed to react. But that's how we act, And so then someone doesn't act in a way that's aligned with exactly what's in our head. And it's just like, clearly this person doesn't care about me. It's like, no, they just are thinking about things really differently. So it's like when I'm talking to my students who are mostly women and, talking about like getting into a relationship with someone, a lot of women, I mean, I see this happen sometimes with men also, but it's way more common with women where like they really want to fast forward through dating. They really want to get into a relationship. Like they feel like once I'm in a relationship, any of the issues we've had will just go away. I'll feel secure. I'll be happy. Like they really want to get into the relationship. And I'm like, stop rushing into relationships. Like, you don't even know what being in a relationship means to him.
Mm.
So, you know, the first time my husband asked me to be his girlfriend, I, I mean, I liked him, but I was sort of like, no, we need to have a bigger conversation, because like I wanted to be clear like what it means to you to be in a relationship. Sometimes people are just totally out of alignment. So it's like I always tell the women that I work with, like, find out what he wants to provide in the relationship. You know, what do you want to provide in the relationship? Like, sometimes people's expectations are just so far off from the beginning. And I'm like, if you would have this conversation before you decided to be boyfriend, girlfriend, you wouldn't be here, you know, 2 years later on completely different pages,
Mm.
you know? And so it's like, for me, it was the year of the man, right? Like I was calling in my husband. So I was like, I'm not going to be in a committed relationship with someone unless there is real potential for us to be in it for the long haul. Like I'm not looking for a boyfriend for a couple of months. So like, I'm only interested in being in a relationship if you think that I'm potentially someone that you could marry. You don't have to commit to marrying me right now, but like it needs to be like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, women are often not direct, right? Like we're so afraid of scaring men off. So guys don't even know what we're thinking, right? You know, and I'm sure he had never heard any woman say things in such a clear way, because it's like girls always are tiptoeing around the fact that they want commitment. And I was just like, nope, this is what I want. And it's like, I was so sure about what I was going to get that I wasn't afraid. Like I was just like, if it's not him, it's someone else. So it was like I was totally relaxed and at ease with expressing my expectations and hopes and desires. And then it gave him so much more space to say like, oh yes, I can provide all of the things that you want. And he was happy to. Like it was so clear. And I think that's like a funny thing. It's like women don't realize how much men want to make them happy. Like they don't know. And
Yeah.
it's like whenever I talk to a man, they're just like, I'm like, well, what does she need to do? And he's like, well, when she like smiles really nicely and like tells me thank you, like it makes me feel really happy. And it's like, that's it. Like women think that it's really like that men require so much more. And it's like, seems like most of you just want someone who's gonna like be appreciative and like nice to you. Like other things as well, but like
Sure.
generally speaking,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of deep rooted too of like, especially those who grew up with like a loving mom or parent, right? Of that's where you first feel love is like, you know, look at, you get that appreciation, you get those kind words, and those dissipate from those around you as a man in particular, as you get older,
yeah,
that you crave that
yeah,
appreciation. I mean, I can speak for that in my life. Like I've certainly, I'm sure you're aware of the love languages, and, you know, I've come to learn that mine, you know, one of mine is words of appreciation. I find a lot of
me
men,
too.
hey, I find a lot of men actually are, especially who grew up with my friends who grew up with really loving moms, are very words of appreciation, because that's how they first were understood love was, you know, you would hear your mom
Yeah,
just say those nice things to you. Um,
I've
I
seen it. I've seen it that way where men like really appreciate that, and then I've seen the opposite where they're like, no one said nice things to me since I was 5, and
just
like for they compliments are just like weird to them. They're like, this means nothing to me. It's really strange. I would say that the one I see most with men um, is physical affection. I would say that's the one that I see like almost all men have, and then everyone has 2 primary ones. So it's like I see some with the words of affirmation, and I see some where they're like, please don't ever bother complimenting me. Like it's in one ear and out the other. It's both ways, right?
it's true. It's true. It's a weird dichotomy too, because I'm definitely words of appreciation. I also don't know how to accept a compliment. So there's a really huge like gap there, you know, of
Yeah.
like what's going on. So done a lot of inner work on why that is. But I wanted to, I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to ask just a few more questions that I would love to pick your brain on. One, I think the people who are going to be listening to this are probably going to be uh, going through some inner work at the moment, probably having new emotions arise. Hopefully this podcast sparks a lot of thoughts and things you're talking about that are making them go, you know, shit, I hadn't been aware of that. I hadn't been feeling that for a while. And she's right. When that starts to happen, and let's say that you've created an identity in your relationship, or maybe even you're single and you're just dating someone and it's been a few months and you're starting to have these realizations, these better understandings of yourself. I think men, the tendency, like we talked about, is to keep it in until there's some pivotal juncture where it's like, oh, here's the moment. It's safe to say all this stuff because we've created this environment of tension. Now is the time to release it. How do you help, or what do you recommend to men who are maybe having these changes, these emotions, these realizations, and their instinct is do not share that with my partner? How do you, I guess from a woman's perspective, what's the best way to start bringing these new ideas or realizations to the table? I think there's a fear that, yeah, but I'm not supposed to be that guy. I'm supposed to be the provider, quiet, stern type, or whatever their role is. How do you have any recommendations on whether it's communication style or strategies to work through that with their partner?
I think that women are often very curious about things. Like women are very curious, not that men aren't curious, but if
We're
a
dumber.
man,
Let's be honest. We're a lot simpler and I've come to realize this. Like I'm not even just saying this, like I've just learned over time. We are like there's beauty in simplicity and being dumber, but we're certainly it's okay. We can say that here. It's a safe place to say
I
that.
don't think men are dumber at all, but I do think that men can get much more focused on what's in front of them. Women are like, a lot of women really like to dig into things. They want to know everything, right? So I think for a man who's like nervous about it, it's like give the context. If my husband came up to me and said, babe, I was listening to this podcast and there was this woman and she was talking about this, that, and the other. And I thought that maybe that could kind of apply to me. Like, how do you feel about that? Or what do you think? I would be like, great, let's see the episode. I'm going to listen to it. And then we'll have like a whole, like, I would be so happy to have that conversation, So it's like, if you don't know where to start with the context. Like, what were you doing? I was listening to this podcast. I think even just sometimes those little tidbits into your inner world, like might mean so much to the woman in your life.
Hmm.
It's like, we get used to tolerating just like not knowing what's going on in our man's mind because they are so reluctant. So even sharing that you were listening to a podcast, geared to men that want to be better, like your woman is going to love that. She's going to be like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Like, I think most women have a very positive reaction to that. I know I definitely would. I would love if my husband was like, yeah, I'm working on myself. I'd be like, you're amazing. I mean, he's already amazing, but
Yeah.
still. That would be like the easiest way to start is just say what's going on.
Okay.
If your person is like consistently responding to you in a way that makes you feel less and less safe sharing, or that, she requires you be a very specific way all the time, it's always like, maybe this isn't your person, like there is someone who can appreciate you, who can love you. And everyone's going to have faults. There's no person who's going to be like, I love every single thing about you, even this horrible, annoying thing that that you do. No. But generally speaking, you should be with someone that you are okay to talk to and to tell things to.
Yeah. Man, that would be a whole nother episode. I'd love to interview about. I think there are so many men who, both sides, men and women, but for this podcast in particular, men who are probably in not healthy relationships that don't know how to address them or how to work through them. And I just think and a big piece of that is they might be aware of it, but they don't know how to communicate that with the partner in their life. Okay. So I've got you here. I want to do a quick little rapid fire, if this is okay with you.
Let's do it.
Okay. First, you have talked with hundreds, if not thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of women, help them with dating, coaching them through relationships. Give us 1 to 2 major mistakes you see guys do dating that you've heard from your female clients. So like they come in, we're talking maybe first 2 to 3 weeks of dating. Like, guys, come on. What are you doing? What are you thinking here that we can help our fellow men avoid in the future that are out there dating?
So one of the things that drives women absolutely crazy is men that come in real hot and then they peter off. I think that it just, because men come in and they're excited and they're enthusiastic, but they haven't decided that someone is the one. They're just exploring and they're excited. And then they're like, once they've let go of that initial excitement, they react however they're feeling, which is maybe they want to keep seeing this person, maybe not. Women find that really hurtful because when you come into the beginning of dating someone and you're really enthusiastic, she's taking it very personally. She's really feeling like he thinks that I'm the one. It's love at first sight for him. And sometimes it's the case, but often it's not. Often that's just a man's pattern where he's really excited at the beginning, he comes in real hot, and then he disappears. Women are going to appreciate it so much more if you can just show up consistently. If you're interested, show that you're interested, follow up, do what you say you're going to do, but you don't have to be so over the top. It's much better if you're married and then you're doing these big romantic gestures, you know, someone that you've already committed with. But at the beginning, it really, really throws women off because you don't know anything yet. Like, you're not sure. So like, if that's a pattern that you have, please look at that. It really, really, it hurts a lot of women. That's something I hear all the time. Drives them absolutely nuts.
Okay. I love that. I love it. I think that's an absolute great one. Makes me think of when I was like a teenager, and even maybe in my very early 20s, like showing up with flowers on a second date, of like just way excited, and then being like, date 4, like, wait, what am I doing? Like it's just, as a man, you get so mission oriented. It's like mission, yes, accomplish. And your brain just, I don't know, we're strange creatures. I'm glad you brought that one up. I think we're probably not even aware of I think a lot of men probably aren't even aware that they do that. Okay. I want to ask then.
Unless you can keep it up. If you're just like a passionate person and you're going to be like that from like the first date onwards, then like have at it. But
if that's you, I recommend with very inexpensive things, or do it like you got a huge standard to live up to if you're going to be doing that for forever. But okay, what about for men who are in longer relationships? Let's say they've been married, I've been dating for like 4 or 5 years. Where do you find that, has there been a pattern of where the women you've coached, they've noticed there's been a drop of passion, and how can a man reignite passion or excitement or just even curiosity with their partner after a long time?
This is where you're going to want to come in hot. Like, this is when you do that thing where it's like out of the ordinary. Like, people just fall into patterns, and like, that's part of what's really nice about a committed relationship, right? It's like you sort of know what to expect, but like, just to occasionally do something that she doesn't expect in a really good way. I find that often women are indirect and they'll drop hints about something they want to do. They're like, oh, this would be so romantic. This would be so nice. And he's like, yeah, it would be. But then like doesn't make it happen. I find that in a lot of relationships, like the woman feels like she ends up, they switch roles a little bit. Like, because he's no longer courting and pursuing, there isn't any pursuit. So it's like, treat her like your girlfriend sometimes. Treat her like you still really want to impress her. And like, that can go really far. It's just like, do it based on what she likes. What would be romantic for her? What would be the sort of thing where like when she talks to her girlfriend, she'll be like, oh my God, you'll never guess what he did. And she can be really excited. Like, give her something to brag about.
Ooh, I like that. Give her something to brag about. I like that. Okay, last 2 questions. Where do you hope Crystal Irom is in 10 years from now, and what is she focused on in life?
10 years from now, Crystal Irom is going to be more in love than ever with her husband, Kobe. They are going to have a beautiful family together. She will have written several books, and she'll really have had an impact on the narrative around dating in the 21st century. She will have helped tens of thousands of people meet their person and improve their love lives. She will be occasionally speaking on big stages. She'll occasionally do interviews, and just living her best life.
I love it. I love it. So I always ask that question. There's Matthew McConaughey once said, they asked him who his hero was, and he said, my hero is always the 10-year ahead of me version of myself. And he said, I'm never going to reach them, but that's who I'm striving for. And I don't have heroes that are other people. My hero is who I know I should be 10 years from now. So I always like to ask that question. Really great one. And then lastly, if you were to meet or if you were in a room full of 6 to 12-year-old boys, and they asked you a question, Crystal, what makes a man? What would your answer be to them?
Wow. Oh my God, this is like too much pressure. To 6 to 12-year-old boys. I've never felt stumped on an interview before.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
cool. So I'll let you think for a sec, because so I'm doing this because I'm actually, everyone I'm asking, I'm ending with this question. I actually want to put together a book of everyone's answers, not to make even more pressure, just like simply, I think that there's, what I've been really fascinated about is asking, especially men who I'm interviewing, what was your definition of a man when you were younger? And like, what was instilled upon you as what makes a man, what is a man when you're younger, and how has that evolved to now? And
Wow.
how would you explain that now to a younger person that might have been different than it was explained to you? For me, for example, when I was growing up, right, a man was, you be strong, don't show emotion, tough it out, suck it up. But I also grew up a lot more with my mom than my dad. So there was also a lot of
Hmm.
this feminine impulse of it's okay and I'm here for you and support, and I could share emotion. And so now if I meet a young man or a boy or a kid, and they're like, trying to figure out what a man is, one, they're probably not going to ask that question, but I wish they would, so I could sit there and tell them and be like, to me, it's not what I was told when I was a kid what a man should be. So I would love to just kind of get your sense of what makes a
This
man.
is so interesting. I'm going to tell you why I'm having such a hard time with this question.
Yeah.
Because I really love men. And as a dating coach and working primarily with women who are dating, there's a lot of negativity about men.
Mm.
And I love men. And so it's like I've gotten really used to just being like, stop with this language about men, that men are this or that or the other thing. And it's like I've sort of stopped even defining men. I'm sort of like, I know it when I see it. And I hate hearing the language that's like, well, a real man does this, or a real man does that, or a real man isn't. Like, I just find it really like unkind to these beings that I love. And
Yeah.
so it's like, I like can't even think in this way. This question is honestly blowing my mind. I'm so sorry that I don't have an answer for you,
No.
but like,
No.
I'm literally stumped. I don't even know what I would say.
Okay.
I'll have to think
Let's
on it.
let's let's put it this way real quick. If you're, let's say that you have a son, and they're in elementary school. What if they were to say, what's the difference between a man and a woman, mom? Not in a biological sense or anatomy sense, but like, what's the difference between a man and a woman in this case when it comes to a man?
Not in a biological sense.
So I'll give you mine, for example, and I don't know if that will help, but for me, so the difference between uh, a man and a woman, or what makes a man, I guess the way for me, it's what makes a man is someone who is uh, strong in who he feels like he should be and is, someone who is centered in their beliefs, and someone who is willing to give fearlessly and be open to receiving love unconditionally.
Oh my God, that's so good.
I've thought about it, been journaling about it. It's like something that. So I've had some practice. This is what I'm trying to ask people. This is probably a question. This is a good lesson for me as a podcast, because I should have sent this one ahead of time. We'll come back to it if you
Yeah,
want
you
to.
put me on the spot.
Yeah. Okay, how about this? Let's do it this way. What do you feel like you were told how men should be when you were growing up as a kid? What was the expectation of what, like, I don't know if you had brothers or like male friends, of like what you thought when you were a kid men were supposed to be like?
Oh, okay. Men were supposed to be providers and strong and gallant. So it's a cross between like a dad from the 50s and Prince Charming, essentially.
And is it still the same for you now, or is it different of what you think?
Oh, it's different now. I
How's
would
it different?
say some of those elements are still there, this element of having a sense of honor and a being who has his own relationship to honor and like who stands up for his own sense of honor and who has a desire to provide in the world, not just to a particular person, but who wants to provide and who's clear on what he wants to provide, and you know who lives in alignment with his own ideals.
I love it. I love it. That was awesome. We got to the roundabout way of, yeah, I
It's
think
a
that was
long
awesome.
time.
Yeah.
I I'm rarely at a loss for words, but that really stumps me.
I mean, it's a pretty deep metaphor, or philosophical question of like, I'm sure there've definitely been like 100 pages of books written about that topic. So
Yeah.
no fault. I want to say, Crystal, just first off, thank you so much for this. I feel like I could ask you 4 more hours of questions. So I want to be respectful of your time and say thank you so much for hopping on the show. And
You're
I
so
want to,
welcome. This was so fun.
oh my gosh, it's been a blast. I would love to have you back on at some point. And but for our listeners who maybe want to learn more about you, want to follow you, we were talking off air that you've been surprised at how many men are following your
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
If people want to keep up with you, learn from you, how can they do that?
Totally. So you can find me on Instagram at Crystal Irom, Crystal. And Irom is like iron, but with an M instead of an N. Yeah, it's so funny to me. I would say it's like a third of my followers almost are men. So yeah,
Yeah.
come follow me. Most of my content is geared towards women, but I think it'll be very interesting for you to hear, what an expert love coach is telling the women.
Absolutely. Hey guys, if you're out there, trust me, it's been super, super eye-opening to follow Crystal and see her content. So go follow her on Instagram at Crystal Irom, Irom, on Instagram. And guys, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Man in Progress podcast.